we are back, and it is on an unusual day for us. Usually we're just doing Tuesdays lately, but I have been away on vacation and got back a day late because of my flights being canceled. I find that flying has become quite an interesting experience since the pandemic started. It's really hard to get home sometimes, but I'm back, we're back, and we're going to resume our regular schedule of getting together here on Tuesdays, at least most of the time. So glad you guys are able to make it today. Today we are talking about sweeteners, the good, the bad, the ugly. But before we get into that, for those of you who are not familiar with who we are, if you're new to our communities, my name is Jessica Melnick. I'm a registered holistic nutritionist, the founder of the Anti-Arthritis Method, the host of the Happy Joints Arthritis Solutions Group, and I help both women and men with various forms of arthritis get back to living life the way that they choose to, not the way that they have to. And I'm going to pass it back to you, Casey.
Yep, I am Casey Kephart. I'm the founder of the Feel Good Formula. I'm a functional medicine nutritionist, and I work with women with all different types of autoimmune diseases to get you back to the activities you love and squash those symptoms you're having. And I live in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Amazing. Where the sun always shines.
Where the sun always shines. I figured I won't put that in there today just to not make everybody else jealous. But
yeah, right. All right, so today we're talking about sweeteners. So what are some of the things that you can use besides our regular refined sugars that are like our basic white cane sugar and brown sugars, which we all know are not good for us. They're something that we should have, never eat them or have very little of them as a treat once in a while for various reasons. So we also want to just be aware that, yes, there's a lot of different stuff out there, and there are some substitutes that are, I would argue, just as bad as regular sugar, but for different reasons. And some that are great to use in moderation that are naturally occurring, lower glycemic, meaning they're not going to shoot your blood sugar up really fast and high and make your body just pump out insulin like crazy, but and things that our body actually recognizes and knows what to do with it. So let's get into that a little bit today. So there is something that, I don't know, it's been fairly new to me in the last couple of years, and it is monk fruit. And the best form of monk fruit sweetener is having it pure without erythritol. So most sugars, like sweeteners out there with monk fruit, is a blend of monk fruit and erythritol. At least that's what I find in the stores. Mm-hmm. And the reason why we recommend avoiding the erythritol, it is something, like, full disclosure, something I use in moderation because it is a calorie-free sweetener. It is fairly natural. But it is a sugar alcohol, and there's a few of these sweeteners that come under the sugar alcohol umbrella. And the reason why we want to keep those in like little or moderation is because they act the same as alcohol in our body, and they can also damage our gut and cause digestive distress. So we don't want to get too much of that. So pure monk fruit sweetener is something that is a good alternative. Monk fruit is from a naturally occurring plant, and it is something that you can use in like baking recipes. You can put it in your coffee or your tea. I don't know, Casey, do you use it for anything, monk fruit?
Yeah, I just put it in my smoothie yesterday, actually. And then I was putting it in, I make coconut milk whipped cream, which is just coconut milk from the can, and then I put a couple drops of monk fruit in there, which is very good. I've been replacing it with stevia just because of like the studies that are coming out about that and your insulin levels, and I think your kidneys as well, but I think that's in really high doses. Anyways, and then coffee was the other one I was putting it in a couple times. So it comes in all different forms. So there's powder, there's granules, and then there's also a liquid one. I like just using the liquid one because it just blends really nice with everything, especially with like coffee and smoothies. But feel free to try it out. It's a little on the expensive side, but that's okay. You're paying for quality and not cutting it with the erythritol, which is a cheaper option.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Another, I think I wanted to get into, since we're talking about the sugar alcohols and some of the calorie-free sweeteners, stevia, like you said, that's another really popular one. I would also say in small doses for the same reason as erythritol.
Mhm.
There are some conflicting, I would say there is lots of conflicting information about, is stevia good for us? Is it not good for us?
Yeah.
Does it actually raise our blood sugar or not? Some people say, well, no, it's calorie free. It would be just like monk fruit. And there's also really varying degrees of the quality of the stevia we can get out there.
Yeah.
So, like monk fruit, you can get it in powdered form or like liquid drops. Some are flavored liquid drops.
Mhm.
The quality really, really varies. I know you have to be really careful because a lot of it is cut with other starches, and you don't want that, especially if you're like corn is used in like everything as a way, like an anti-caking agent. So if you're sensitive to corn, be really careful with what kind of stevia you're buying, especially in powdered form. Um, yeah, you just want to make sure that it's in its purest form possible, and you have to read the back of the labels. And you also, if you're in a health food store, ask one of the workers there, depending on where you are. I know at my local health food stores, the people there are really, really knowledgeable. So
Yeah.
that's kind of my thing about the sweeteners. And then there's also the xylitol, which I believe xylitol does have some calories in it. It's just less. And it is like a form of a sugar alcohol too. It's found in like sugar-free gums and aspartame-free gums as an alternative. So I'd still say way better for you than aspartame, but again, use in moderation. And Casey, do you want to talk about some of the calorie-free sweeteners that are really nasty that we really want to avoid?
Yeah, I just want to mention about the ones we just talked about with the monk fruit and the stevia, just because there's 0 calories in them and they don't spike your insulin, so they say. That doesn't mean that they don't stop you from having cravings of sugar, though. You're still having this sweet thing in your mouth, and your brain doesn't know any different. And it says sweet, and that gets that brain chemical going, and then we start to still crave sweets throughout the day. So don't think you're cutting corners eating these things and that you won't get your cravings later. So if you're wanting to stop those sugar cravings, don't go to these other substitutional items. You just want to go full turkey on it or wean yourself off of it until you're not having any more and your brain won't crave it anymore.
Yeah.
With the sweet and lows and the Splendas, those blue, pink, and yellow packets that you see at restaurants to put in your coffee. These are cancer provoking chemical agents. Please stop using them. I know they are 0 calories. I know that we think as a society that we're doing better by this. Same with the diet sodas. This comes into the same category that we're talking about. These trick your pancreas to output insulin. Now we have insulin running through our body, not being able to do anything with it. And that almost causes more damage than if you were to have pure cane sugar where your insulin is getting pumped out, but it can actually do the work it needs to do in your body. So we don't want random insulin just circling in our bloodstream, not being able to fulfill its job. So if somebody were to ask me, should I have a diet soda or a regular soda, I would 100% say have the regular soda. It's a lot of sugar, but you're not faking your body. And your insulin should know what to do with it. So if you're also going to go with the regular soda, I would go with the Coke in the glass bottle. One, because it's a glass bottle, and we've talked about that before, but because it's said to have the pure cane sugar in it, not the overly white processed refined that we see nowadays in just the Coke cans. That's a little bit of my 2 cents. But for a takeaway, eat regular organic cane sugar over these Splenda aspartame man-made chemical cancer provoking little packets.
Yeah. And I think too, I wanted to say as well, I had a client ask me the other day, what about Truvia? And Truvia is a form of stevia, very low quality, and I believe it also has other sweeteners in it as
Yeah.
well. like
But
may have.
with aspartame, I think.
Yeah, so avoid that like the plague. Don't want
Yeah.
that. And as far as I know, aspartame is a neurotoxin as well.
So I was just going to say that it's comparable to formaldehyde, and in our body, it's called acetaldehyde that it breaks down into, which can be very toxic in low and high levels in our body, which is also a neurotoxin and a systemic toxin altogether. So again, stay away. Don't
Yes.
eat. But let's get back on the track of some other good quality sugars to replace these nasty things with would be honey. We've all heard that honey is good for us in allergies or our immune system. It will spike your insulin, it will raise your glucose levels, but not as much. It's not as toxic. And when you're looking for honey on the shelf, I would recommend going to your local farmer's market or a local store and finding a local brand, because it has that pollen and those allergies in there that you're already used to, and it can help overcome your allergies. But also, try to pick a raw and unpasteurized form, because this is less processed. It's going to have more of those nutrients left in there. But when we start to pasteurize and process things, we tend to strip the nutrients out. So look for the most purest form of honey that you can if you don't own a bee farm. God, I could never own a bee farm, Jessica. Like, that would be my worst nightmare.
Yeah, I've never been stung, and I'm absolutely terrified of being stung. So
Oh,
whenever a bee or a wasp comes near me, I sit extremely still.
yes. Yes.
Yeah, so yeah, no, I agree. Raw and pasteurized, because as soon as you pasteurize the honey, you're taking all the good stuff out of it. It's being essentially like boiled off. And also, real honey is a natural, like antibacterial
Mm-hmm.
agent as well. Like it's been used in the past for wound healing, and it
Yeah.
also doesn't spoil. It's like magical. So, real
Mhm.
unpasteurized honey does it lasts so long because it's its own like antibacterial agent. It's really quite fascinating.
Yeah, I read a book recently about how they used to use honey for surgical wounds. Isn't that something? We use so much toxic stuff now for that, which works, that we need, but they used to just slap some honey in it.
Yeah, it sounds crazy, but yeah, it's incredible.
Imagine
It
coming
really
home with your dog licking your arm
Yeah.
because of the
Well,
honey.
and when you have like a cold or like a throat infection, having a lozenge with real honey in it. I actually found
Yeah.
some not that long ago. It was like made from like 99% real honey. And
Hmm.
that was like the throat lozenge. And
Yeah.
even just having a teaspoon of honey, if your throat is really like scratchy and you're coughing, it really helps like coat your throat and kill bacteria in there. So,
Yeah.
oh no.
Manuka honey is supposed to be really good for that too.
Yeah.
We just got a comment saying, what about molasses?
Yeah, well, blackstrap molasses, right? Those are
Hmm.
really, really good as well. You want real molasses, not, refined and kind of ones that are cut with other things. Do you have any other opinions on molasses, Casey?
I don't know much about it. I haven't researched it, but I think it's also filled with a lot of vitamins and minerals that you don't see in like honey. Like I think even is iron in there? There's some
I think
things.
there is. I think there is.
Yeah, there's some things in molasses that is pretty good. Pretty good. Again, just don't go overboard with it, and that's a really strong taste too. So I'm wondering what you would want to put molasses in. Maybe like baking goods.
Yeah, I love to make like a paleo ginger snap or ginger cookies at Christmas with molasses. And I also have
Mm.
a really nice recipe for like a gingerbread muffin where I replace, well, that's the sweetener I use is molasses in there. And it's really nice because, yeah, it has that, it goes really well with like spiced baked goods.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but for the daily, I wouldn't say molasses is something that we use typically. But blackstrap molasses is what you want to look for, as far as
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
And we also have maple syrup and maple sugar. So we're talking about like pure forms of maple syrup. So not pancake syrup, which is full of high fructose corn syrup and other
Hmm.
things that you'd never want to put in your body. So I don't want to list a bunch of brands. There are some that were near and dear to my heart as a child. And they do, of course, they tasted good. But pure maple syrup is absolutely delicious. Just make sure that what you're getting is what is on, like you look at the label, make sure that what you're getting is actually pure maple syrup. So Costco carries a nice one that is a good quality. And yes, a pure maple syrup is going to cost a lot more than a pancake syrup. But like I said, you're actually getting nutrition in there and it's a lot lower glycemic. It's not going to like shoot up your blood sugar insanely like a high fructose corn syrup, um,
Mm-hmm.
diabetes, and all the other horrible things. So,
Yeah.
yeah, maple syrup and maple sugars are really, really good options as well.
Yeah. Like put a tap on a tree and like suck the syrup out of it. That's the kind of quality we're talking about. But do you remember or have you ever used, Jessica, the sugar-free syrups out there? When I was like all sugar-free and trying to like lose weight and had my eating disorder, like I would go to town on pancakes and sugar-free syrup, and I thought I was doing the best thing possible for me when literally I'm probably ruining my kidneys and my liver and my gut. Again, stay away from anything that says sugar free. It's not good for
Yeah.
you.
Oh, yeah. Most of that stuff, it's just like to me, it literally like I remember trying a coffee made with like a sugar-free flavored syrup. And
Yeah.
I had one sip and it literally like it made my stomach feel like it was in my throat. Like it was
Yes.
so gross. It was so nauseating. It was like literally my body knew that this was not a good thing. Like it was like instant revolt. Like, ugh,
Yeah.
that just makes this makes me my skin crawl thinking about those sugar-free syrups.
It's also like a weird aftertaste too. It's like an unreal taste that you have. Yeah, it's nasty. Anybody in the comments want to comment on their sugar-free syrup experience? Please enlighten me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This stuff is just nasty, unfortunately.
Yeah. Another thing on the list would be date syrup or date sugar, coming from real dates. Dates are very sweet, and they're used to sweeten up baking products or your smoothies, or bacon wrap dates is wonderful. But this would be another okay option for sugar as well. A very acquired taste, just like a molasses would be probably. Um, I don't know if date sugar or date syrup is cut with anything else. I haven't seen it. I just bought some date syrup from Trader Joe's a couple months ago, and it was purely just dates. I haven't
Yeah.
looked at other brands though, because it's not super popular.
Yeah, it's not super popular here in Canada either. Maple sugar is also not super popular. Maple syrup, yes, because of course we have like down east and like Quebec, Ontario, they have maple trees. So maple sugar is and maple syrup is really common. You find all the maple treats in the airports in Canada and like the souvenir shops. Like,
Mm-hmm.
take home their maple treats.
Right.
Yeah, I'd say date sugar and maple sugar aren't as common in the stores, but coconut sugar is really, really popular. I can always find it in my local health food store, even in one of my like better grocery stores. They always have like coconut sugar. It's otherwise called like palm sugar as well.
Right.
Same thing. That works amazingly well as well in like when I make my like healthier treats in baking, I'll use the coconut sugar. The coconut nectar I haven't used as much. I did use it though a couple years ago. We were talking about this on my group call with my clients the other night. We were talking about how to bring back chocolate after the elimination phase.
Mm,
And because we're isolating, one food at a time. It's like, well, how do you test to see how you're responding to cocoa or raw cacao without buying a chocolate bar that's going to have all this other stuff in it that you can't have? Because usually there's things like soy emulsifiers and things that you can't have.
right.
So there was a recipe I had back in the day for it had the coconut nectar, the raw cacao powder, and it had some raw cacao butter as well. And you could add like raisins or nuts or whatever if you reintroduced successfully like nuts and things like that. But it was a really nice recipe because you could really isolate, okay, well, how does my body respond to the cocoa powder because raw cacao powder is a superfood as well. So if you can tolerate it, it's a lovely treat. And coconut nectar goes really well with it. So does maple syrup, I would say. The coconut nectar was just a little thicker, a little stickier as well. So yeah, nice option.
Okay. Cool.
Oh,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, you go.
Okay, I was just gonna we already got into what sugars we should kind of avoid when we talked about like aspartame and Splenda and all of that, but I guess there's some other ones on this list too, like plain white sugar, which would be a cane sugar, brown sugar. It's just more refined. There's not a lot of nutrients in it. It's there to spike your insulin and your glucose levels. That's really it. And that's the difference between these lists is what we just listed, good sources. It's going to add some vitamins and some minerals and some antioxidants to your diet, not just the glucose. These literally, you're just providing an insulin spike, and that is it. It's kind of just an empty calorie that you're eating. And then agave would be another one on this list. It's just very high on the glycemic load. It would add a little bit of nutrients to your body, but it's going to spike it more than a honey would. So we tend to put that on the don't consume unless you're having your once a month make at home margarita and you put some agave in it. So
Yeah. Oh, I remember years ago when agave syrup was all the rage and everyone's like, oh,
mm-hmm.
it's natural sweetener. And then we find out years later that it's like, no, it's like a really high glycemic, so be careful. Because it is like it tastes quite nice and it's like it's pretty like mild tasting. It goes well with like a lot of things, but yes, just be careful with that. And I always tell my clients too, when you are having sweet treats or using these sweeteners for baked goods and like healthier baked treats and things like that, think moderation. And also if you're having the sugars, even the healthier ones, make sure that you're also consuming like good fats and good protein with it as well, so that you're slowing down that sugar spike. So you're not going to have like that, sugar surge and that crash shortly after. So that fat and that protein is going to help slow everything down and help your body digest things slower. So
Yeah,
that is all that I have to say about sugars and sweeteners. And anything else, Casey, that you wanted to add?
Yeah, we failed to mention why we're talking about this and what sugar does to the body. So I just want to do a brief overload to that overview of that, which I'm sure you guys already know. But when we have a diet that is higher consumption of sugar and carbohydrates, it leads to more funky things happening in our body, especially if we are susceptible or have autoimmune diseases or a chronic inflammatory disease. So sugar is a systemic inflammatory, which just means from head to toe, you are going to be inflamed with more sugar that you eat and carbohydrate sources. It also feeds the bad bacteria in our bodies. So we want an 80% amount of good bacteria and a 20% amount of bad bacteria. And when we have more sugars, that bad bacteria goes up and up and up and up, and the good bacteria goes down. Now we have maybe 80% bad bacteria and 20% good. And this is where all the chronic illnesses happen and your fatigue and your doctor's appointments start happening more and more and more. When the bacteria is out of range with the good bacteria, we tend to get things like candida, which is an overgrowth of bacteria. We get more yeast infections, or for women, yeast infections or bacterial vaginosis. We get more of a leaky gut, or it contributes more to our leaky gut. We get more infections in general or UTIs. It can really affect your mood as well, your mood stability. So I know that when I eat a high carbohydrate source, sugars, I get a little irritable. I get a little like snippy snappy, and I'm sometimes just not fun to be around. So any men watching, do not feed me pancakes because I might not be happy afterwards. Other things that can happen though would be headaches, fatigue. you get some mitochondrial damage. Mitochondria are like the power sources of your cells. They're the batteries or the energy bunny that keeps our cells going and to make our body run. So it gets fatigued when we have an overproduction of glucose in the body. And then just intestinal dysbiosis, which goes hand in hand with the 80% good, the 20% bad, and the leaky gut. So we're kind of disrupting just everything in our body with overconsumption of sugar. And we want to make sure that we are eating an amount that our body likes of carbohydrates. And that's different for everybody. How many grams of carbohydrates and sugars your body is okay with will change from me to Jessica to you at home. So find that healthy balance for yourself. And if you're finding that you have some of these symptoms I just went over, try lowering your carbohydrate sources and see how you feel then.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I know that when I have too many carbohydrates at a meal, I just want to have a nap right after. It just makes me
Absolutely.
so tired. Like, yeah, it just makes me want to, like, if I have too much at lunch, I'm like, oh my goodness, like, where's the couch? And I need a huge coffee just to like get
Yeah.
myself moving. And it lasts for a long time. And I also find too that it's changed for me as I've gotten older. So from my 30s to my 40s now, it's really shifted. I tend to feel so much more like clear in my head. I have just more
Mm-hmm.
mental and physical energy when I'm eating lower carbohydrates. So basically what that's meant is I've really had to kind of shift how I used to eat, which was a healthy diet, to replacing some of those carbohydrates with healthy fat sources and healthy protein sources.
Yes.
Because you still need calories, but it's just making that shift in the different types of macronutrients that I'm eating and what ratios that feels. And it definitely takes some trial and error, and we're all different. So yeah, just being aware of that. And, I always tell my clients, just pay attention to how your body feels after you eat, take note of that. Because I think so many of us, we just get so busy day to day, and then we're not really paying attention or making a connection between what we're eating and how we're feeling, whether it's like mentally, emotionally, physically. So yeah, just
Definitely. Yeah, I forgot to mention skin issues is also a really big one with dysbiosis and sugar consumption. So eczema, rosacea, acne, psoriasis, huge with sugars and carbohydrates. So
absolutely. So I hope that
awesome.
gave you guys all some good food for thought. Comment below if you have any other questions, and we'll get back to you. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you guys again on Tuesday.
Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.